Articuno, the first member of the legendary bird trio, denizen of the Seafoam Islands, and mascot of the biggest team in a game that nobody plays anymore. When you first see Articuno through a set of binoculars departing Fuchsia City, you can tell just from that brief sighting that it's a mythical creature with power befitting the title of legendary. And you already know what I'm going to say next. Or is it? Let's find out. In this video, we'll be covering Articuno during these popular competitive formats. Although this time, doubles won't be covered because Articuno hasn't really been used in doubles, so fair warning. Also, I want to apologize here for covering 2 ice types in a row. In fact, Articuno wasn't voted in as the Pokemon for this video, but if I'm going to cover one bird, I may as well cover them all in order. Articuno's biggest boon in Gen 1 was its sky-high special stat, coming in at tied for 4th in the game just behind Mewtwo, Alakazam, and Gengar. Combined with Generation 1's most powerful special move in Blizzard, Articuno was capable of decimating the ever-prevalent Golem and Rhydon, as well as being a solid counter for Exeggutor. This put it into a similar role as Lapras. Past that, however, Articuno's limitations start to weigh it down. Its mediocre speed stat leaves it vulnerable to faster threats like Alakazam and Tauros. Because of this, it frequently ran agility to compensate, but that still required a turn of setting up, during which the Blizzard bird was left defenseless, so it was mainly used for late game sweeps. In addition, Articuno couldn't muster the same bulkiness as Lapras, which in tandem with its dual ice and flying typing meant that switching into many of the things it was supposed to counter meant running the risk of being buried under a bunch of rocks. Finally, Articuno's shallow move pool meant it was pretty much limited to only normal and ice as viable attacking moves, with Sky Attack making appearances more as a gimmick than anything. Articuno struggled especially hard against water types like Cloyster, Starmie, with the latter boasting a 4 times resistant to Blizzard and bulk to shake off Articuno's mediocre physical attacks, while Starmie held a super effective Thunderbolt to shock it out of the sky. Its hardest counter, however, was actually its biggest competition as a Blizzard user in Lapras, who held all of the advantages of the aforementioned 2 counters in one Lochmas-sized package, in addition to some utility in the form of Confuse Ray. Overall, Articuno was pretty much a one-trick bird in Gen 1. Its status as the best user of the best special move in the generation meant that even special walls like Alakazam and Chansey had some reason to fear it, but its usage outside of spamming Blizzard was decidedly limited. Alright, Gen 2 and Articuno barely shifts at all in usage, although its strategy switches quite a bit. Blizzard nerfs and the special split both weren't kind to it, effectively gutting the sheer power that Articuno brought to the table previously. While its special defense stat stayed at an astronomically high 125, it took a full 30-point nerf to its special attack, giving it a final special attack stat of 95. What's more, Fire's newfound resistance to ice typing meant Articuno's already limited coverage was even more restricted, and the popularity of Tyranitar in Gen 2 posed its fair share of problems. Similarly to Lapras, a phrase you may have gleaned I'm going to say a lot, it now had to run Ice Beam instead of Blizzard because of the accuracy changes. However, Articuno's move pool still remained depressingly shallow. Articuno's matchups remained pretty much the same as in last generation, but with several nuances in how they were played. It still has trouble with special walls. Starlax in particular completely destroys it due to its monstrous special defense and access to rest, which allows it ample time to boost against Articuno with Curse. Blissey also gives it trouble, but it still has tools to be competitive. It still has to be incredibly scared of rock types though, and no longer has the ability to one-hit KO them like in last generation. Gen 2 marked a lot of changes to the way Articuno was used, but its overall usage remained roughly the same as a niche pick just on the edge of popularity. Gen 3, things are looking up for Articuno in this generation, although just like Lapras, it remained relegated to the borderline tier. Articuno's boosted usage is mostly owed to the shifts in the metagame around it, rather than any actual changes to the blue bird itself. It boasts good matchups against many of the premier threats in Gen 3 such as Celebi, Swampert, and Salamence, and the prevalence of Spike Stall as a strategy now means Articuno's ability to phase with Roar is now relevant. It did get a few new tricks in the shape of Heal Bell and Pressure, but sets relying on those aspects of Articuno were generally outclassed by its reliable Rest Talk set. However, Pressure does allow Articuno to now stall out Blissey and several water types while hoping for a freeze. Articuno's worst enemies this gen are the newly popular Steel types. Jirachi, Metagross, and Registeel all shrug off its Ice Beam and hit it back with super effective moves. The usual duo of Starmie and Lapras still pose their fair share of problems, as do high special attack electric and fire type like Raikou, Jolteon, and Houndoom, and its fellow legendary bird Moltres. And finally, rock types as well are going to hit it hard. More on that coming up next. Alright, Gen 4, you were all waiting for it. Stealth Rocks are here, and they're not giving a friendly handshake to our flying friends so much as a death sentence. 50% of its health gone on every switch means Articuno is going to have a hard time ever setting up. And what a surprise, it's doing the same thing as before, stalling. While Restock is mostly departed, Articuno's new tool in Roost allows it to do pretty much the same things while freeing up a move slot to run Substitute. Pressure allows it to win stall battles against underused tanks like Chansey and Milotic, but winning the stall battle isn't worth much when rocks mean Articuno is going to be crippled almost every time it switches in. But rocks weren't its only problem. Once again, steel types like Metagross and Magnezone eat it alive. Even in underuse, Articuno can't use its main stalling tool in Toxic effectively due to all the steel and electric types running around. Faced with all that hardship and the availability of better stallers in both overuse and underuse, Articuno dropped all the way down to never use, although it was still run occasionally in underuse. Gen 5 brought a whole bunch of changes, but Articuno remained pretty much frozen in place, maybe as retribution for all the freezing it did back in Gen 1. Its move pool is still shallow and rocks still destroy it. Its one new toy is Hurricane, allowing it to sort of relive the nuking of its glory days, but even with that, Articuno's typing just drags it down. Also, even with Hurricane has 70% accuracy, and only bypasses the accuracy check in Rain. By contrast, Blizzard has the same accuracy and bypasses the accuracy check in Hail, but typically teams don't really run two different types of weather. Typically anyway. It could half function with Rapid Smith support, but even then it didn't bring much to the team. Articuno in Gen 5 leans more towards the offensive side, but there was still a fair bit of stalling involved due to what might be considered Articuno's only natural gifts: Pressure, Roost, and wonderful defensive stats. The fact that I could only name 3 things, however, means Articuno would remain in never use. And finally, Gen 6, Articuno, just like Lapras, gained access to the move Freeze Dry in Gen 6 to deal with water types. That's about the only good news that it would receive this generation though. As more Pokemon are released, some old threats are inevitably pushed down into the lower tiers. And so Articuno has to deal with the likes of Registeel and rarely used, Regirock and never used, and even Probopass and PU, the lowest tier where it eventually made its home. It does see some play in the lower tiers, but it hasn't been enough to bring it out of the absolute depths of usage. And that's it. So how good was Articuno actually? Well, last time we concluded that Lapras was not that good. Given that we've been comparing Articuno to Lapras pretty unfavorably this whole time, it's safe to say Articuno is even more not that good. In Gen 1, Articuno had a nice niche as an Ice-type nuker, but it was still beaten out by Lapras in most situations, based on versatility and bulk. It grew even closer to Lapras in Gens 2 and 3 as a staller, but Gen 4 crippled its wings pretty permanently. As is the case with so many Pokemon, even if Articuno were given a better move pool to let it achieve other things, Stealth Rocks most likely relegated it to the bottom of the barrel for the foreseeable future due to its typing. The fact that its typing gives its weaknesses to Steel, Rock, Electric, and Fire also just means that defensively it can't hold up. As for doubles, Articuno hasn't been known as a doubles threat whatsoever. Sorry for all the Lapras jokes, but it just goes to show,
Ice type sucks.
But hey, at least it looks pretty, right? Thanks so much for watching, you guys. If you liked the video, please subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And normally I tell you to vote for who you want to see in the next video, but if you can count to 3 in Spanish, chances are you know what's coming. But don't worry, there will be a lot more positive things to say in the next video. I guess for now, comment on what Pokemon you want to see after the Bird Trio. Alright, that's all I got. Peace out, everyone.